Water is the one thing ancient humans could not negotiate with. You can survive a lot of discomfort: hunger, heat, cold, exhaustion, pain. Humans are annoyingly good at enduring the wrong things, but water is different. Without it, the body does not slowly become unhappy and dramatic. It starts failing. So if ancient humans were living without technology, without pipes, without bottles, without taps, without anything remotely civilized, then the real question is brutal and simple. How did they keep finding water before the world handed them convenience? The answer is not that they were lucky. The answer is that they were forced to become observers of everything. Ancient humans did not have maps, but they had patterns. They watched where animals moved. They watched where birds gathered. They noticed where insects stayed alive and where plants looked fresh even when the ground around them was dry. That kind of knowledge sounds small until you realize it could be the difference between life and collapse. In dry places especially, water did not need to be visible to matter. It only needed to leave clues. A green patch in the distance, mud where there should have been dust, animals walking a certain path again and again, a valley that collected rain, a low place where the land naturally held moisture. Ancient humans were reading the environment like a giant survival code. That is the first thing modern people miss. Finding water was not just a random walk until someone got thirsty enough to fall over. It was pattern recognition. Ancient humans were constantly learning where water showed up, when it appeared, and what the world looked like when it was nearby. If one area had more animals, more vegetation, or more life than the surrounding land, that mattered. If the air changed in a certain place, if the soil felt different, if the ground dipped lower, if the wind came off a valley instead of an open plain, those details were all part of the search. The body was not just walking, it was measuring the land in a way no machine could. And that is where the story gets more interesting, because water was not always something you had to see to find. Sometimes it had to be uncovered. Ancient humans may have dug where the ground held moisture beneath the surface. A dry riverbed could still hide water lower down. A shallow hole in the right place might eventually fill. A place that looked empty from above could still have life underneath it. That is the kind of thing survival teaches fast. The surface lies. The land hides things. If you know where to dig, you might find what the eye cannot see. If you like these ancient human survival mysteries, this is exactly the kind of thing the channel should keep doing. The weird part is not that people found water, it's that they had to solve the problem without any of the tools we now call normal. There's another layer to this too. Ancient humans were not only hunting for visible water sources, they were probably following the behavior of other living things. Animals are good at finding water because they do not have a choice either. Herds, birds, and smaller creatures often lead the way to hidden sources, especially in dry environments. If animals kept returning to one place, that place was worth remembering. If a path kept being used at dawn or dusk, that was not meaningless, that was a hint. Humans who paid attention to that kind of movement would have had a better chance of staying alive. So water finding was partly a matter of watching the world use itself. But there's more. Ancient humans also had to understand seasons, weather, and time. Water does not behave the same way all year. Rain changes where it appears. Rivers swell and shrink. Pools vanish. Wells or natural springs may become more important at certain times than others. That means finding water was not a one-time trick. It was ongoing knowledge. It had to be remembered, shared, and passed on. The group that knew where water tended to appear during dry times had a huge advantage over the group that wandered and hoped. Hope is not a water strategy. Memory is.
And memory is where ancient survival becomes surprisingly human. We tend to imagine early people as just reacting to the world, but a lot of survival depended on remembering places. Remembering where rain pooled, remembering where a valley kept damp, remembering where a spring had once been found, remembering which direction the birds flew at certain times, remembering where the ground stayed cooler. Ancient humans were building mental maps long before paper maps existed. Their brains were the storage system. That makes the whole process feel less primitive and more impressive. They were not using technology because they were too simple to invent it. They were using observation, experience, and memory because those were the tools available. The land was the database, the body was the sensor, the group was the archive. There is also a very practical side to this story that people often forget. Ancient humans probably did not always find fresh, perfect water in some pristine fantasy version of nature. A lot of the time, they were making decisions based on the best available option. Clear water was better than muddy water. Nearby water was better than far water. Known water was better than unknown water. They were constantly balancing risk and need. That is survival in its raw form. Not what is ideal, but what keeps us going. And once humans found water, they had to deal with the next problem, keeping it. Finding water is one thing, not losing it is another. In a world without modern containers, storage mattered a lot. People likely used natural vessels, gourds, skins, and other improvised containers later on. But even before that, the ability to keep water close to a group would have changed everything. Water was not just a resource, it was mobility. If you could carry it, you could go farther. If you could find it again, you could return. If you knew where it was, you could survive in places that would otherwise shut you out. That is why water was probably one of the first things human groups learned to track, share, and protect. It was not optional. It was not decorative. It was the invisible line between moving forward and stopping entirely. And maybe that's the real answer. Ancient humans found water without technology because they were forced to become experts in the world around them. They watched where life clustered. They remembered where the land held moisture. They dug where the surface lied. They followed the behavior of animals. They learned the seasons. They noticed the signs. They built knowledge from repetition until water stopped being a mystery and became a pattern. That does not make the problem small. It makes the solution human. Because survival was never about having the best gear. It was about seeing what mattered before the body paid the price. Ancient humans did not need pipes to understand that water was life. They only needed enough attention to notice where life kept appearing. And that's the strange thing about water. Even today, when we turn a tap and barely think about it, the same old truth still applies. Find water, keep water, remember water. Ancient humans just had to do all of that without the luxury of forgetting.